So as an overview, we're going to cover all business regional outlook. We're going to use the Minneapolis Fed for that. All business Montana outlook, the national manufacturers outlook and challenges, the Montana manufacturers outlook and challenges as well. So starting off with the outlook for all businesses, we use the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank 2013 Business Conditions Survey. The Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank in the 9th District consists of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, northwestern Wisconsin, and of course Montana. They conducted that survey in November 2013, which they do annually, and they released that early in the year this year. There were 321 respondents, and 30 of those respondents were from Montana. The response from all respondents for the 2014 outlook was rather optimistic. We had about 74% optimistic or very optimistic. And if you look at where we were at in 2013, that's almost a 20-point jump. And this bears itself out in the indicators. The percent responding up as opposed to staying the same or going down in these key indicators: sales, full-time employees, capital investment, and productivity, was either up in a plurality or even almost a majority in some cases. So all businesses were rather positive going into 2014 when it comes to these key indicators. Looking more specifically at Montana, 2014 outlook, somewhat optimistic or very optimistic, was about 88%, which was the highest in that 9th district for the Minneapolis Fed. And this is a really marked contrast from what you saw going into 2013, which was only 51% optimistic. It's about a 37-point jump there. I thought I'd throw in North Dakota, not because they had a better optimistic response than Montana, but because their very optimistic response was at 48%. And obviously that's being driven by the energy boom there in North Dakota. Switching to the manufacturer, that sector of the economy, and their viewpoint going into 2014, we used the National Association of Manufacturers Industry Quarterly Survey. This is probably the most real-time data that I've got on the outlook for right now in 2014. They released this on June 9th of this year. They do this quarterly. The next one will be out September 8th if you're curious about that. They had 326 respondents on this. The outlook, very optimistic, very bullish. The highest expected sales and capital investment in the last 2 years. They see an improving economy, new product development, and increased efficiencies. The survey respondents, when asked what the current outlook is for their local area or their state economy, the answer for somewhat positive and very positive was 86%, about the highest that we've seen in 2 years for manufacturers. But of course there's challenges, and that's the case for any sector of the economy. Some of the challenges that have been identified at the national level in this NAM Industry Week survey, one of those is the slowness of growth in the broader economy. Yes, manufacturers are concerned about the global economy, but when they look at their economic plans for the year, the business plans for the year, they pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the domestic economy, so that is a big concern. I think another frustration is with the political process, the gridlock in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of issues that are just kind of sitting on the table, including the reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank, funding of the Highway Trust Fund, and of course comprehensive tax reform. But they also see burdensome regulatory tax and healthcare policies as challenges ahead for manufacturers this year. The top challenges identified in this graph really reflect what's going on in the general business community. There's a lot of concern about rising healthcare costs, but there's also the uncertainty that's they're seeing in the healthcare market, especially in light of the fact that the ACA's implementation and the delay of the employer mandate is lifted next year. Unfavorable business climate, and of course, one of the things we hear a lot about is the skills gap, attracting and retaining a quality workforce. So I'd like to transition into manufacturers' outlook in Montana. And for this, we use the BBER's 2013-2014 Montana Manufacturers Survey. The outlook is reflective of what's going on at the national level. It's very positive. There's expectations of higher sales, increased production levels, and greater profits. 47% expect improved conditions. 90% expect to keep employment levels going. And we see a positive outlook in the different sectors of the Montana economy as well. Wood products, chemicals, machine and equipment, and others. Now, where they feel like their operations are going to stay the same for 2013, there's quite a few that are going to see an increase for 2014. Some of the challenges that Montana manufacturers face: 80% ranked health insurance costs as the top issue, reflective of what we're seeing at the national level. One thing that does stand out for Montana manufacturers in terms of concerns or challenges is our workers' compensation rates. We have some of the highest worker compensation rates in the United States. I think we're 8th highest in the US, which is an improvement from being the highest about 4 or 5 years ago, until we were able to put in place some reforms in the 2011 session. And again, another concern that we're seeing is the skills gap, the shortage of qualified workers. One thing that stood out in the survey is that Montana manufacturers do not fear foreign competition, and they rank it as the least important. And we see the graph here just shows you how they feel about each of those areas of concern or challenges ahead. For the Montana Chamber outlook, what we see is continued growth in oil and gas development in the Bakken. We feel like that's going to, probably if anything, that's going to fuel a budget surplus going into next session. But there's certainly uncertainty in this sector of the economy and natural resource development. One of those areas of concern is the effect of the EPA's carbon emission rules on coal and potentially natural gas development. The other effect could be the listing of the greater sage grouse and how that could affect operations in eastern Montana. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has to look at the listing by October of 2015, so we're not sure where that's going to be until then. And of course, there's going to be continued uncertainty in the healthcare market as the employer mandate kicks in next year. Maybe the impact of that will be minimal on Montana, since we don't have a lot of employers that have more than 50 employees and are subject to the mandate. One thing that seems to be getting better is the housing starts. They're rebounding compared to 2013 in some major areas, except for Helena, Billings, Butte. Pat and Paul will go into a little more detail on this. But one thing is for certain, we're far behind where we were at during the boom of the mid-2000s. So that's our kind of quick look at the outlook going into 2014.